We'd never stand with you. You're a disgrace to this family, and as long as I'm breathing, no one from this house will sit in that audience." My dad's words didn't just hurt, they cut right through me. Just 2 hours before I was scheduled to receive one of the military's highest honors, the Silver Star, my own parents walked away, leaving their front row VIP seats completely empty. But I wasn't going to let their cruelty ruin my proudest moment. I handed those reserved tickets to the one person who actually raised me, my Aunt Clara. What my parents didn't know was that the ceremony was being broadcast live nationwide, and the Pentagon had a life-changing surprise waiting for Clara on stage. Exactly 1 hour after the broadcast ended, my phone lit up. 49 missed calls from my dad. My name is Valerie Vance. I'm 28 years old, a captain in the United States Army, and that afternoon, I was standing in my crisp service dress uniform, frozen in place. My father, Richard, adjusted his lapel with cold disgust. Beside him, my mother couldn't even look me in the eye. To Richard, my military career was never a point of pride. It was an embarrassing contrast to his golden boy, my older brother Brandon, whose corporate failures were always swept under the rug with family money. "We're leaving," my father declared, taking my mother by the arm. "Enjoy your little show." They turned their backs and walked away, leaving 2 reserved VIP front row seats completely empty. A hollow ache settled in my chest, but I refused to let them ruin this day. I turned around and saw my Aunt Clara standing near the entrance, nervously holding a program. She was the only one who had ever truly believed in me, taking extra shifts years ago just to help me afford academy preparation. I walked straight up to her, handed her the 2 VIP passes, and smiled. "Aunt Clara, those front row seats are yours." Growing up in the Vance household meant learning very early on where you stood in the hierarchy. For my father, Richard, everything revolved around my older brother, Brandon. Brandon was the prodigy, the heir apparent, the one destined to build an empire. Every family resource, every dollar of savings, and every ounce of parental affection was poured into Brandon's endless stream of business ideas. When his first tech startup collapsed, my father quietly paid off his debts. When his next consulting firm failed, Richard bought him a new car to boost his confidence. Meanwhile, my ambitions were treated as an annoying afterthought. When I announced at 18 that I was accepting an appointment to the military academy, my father didn't congratulate me. He scoffed, calling it a desperate cry for attention and a complete waste of time. He warned me that if I chose that path, I would be doing it entirely on my own. And I did, but not because of him. It was my Aunt Clara who stepped into the gap. While my parents were busy shielding Brandon from his own failures, Aunt Clara was the one who checked in on me. She took on extra night shifts at the local clinic just to help me cover my initial gear, travel expenses, and study materials. During my toughest deployments, when months would pass without a single letter or call from my parents, Aunt Clara's care packages were the steady anchor that kept me grounded. She gave me the kind of unwavering support that a real family is supposed to provide. Have you ever had to build your own chosen family because the people who raised you failed to show up? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. The heavy oak doors of the auditorium swung open, and I stepped into a sea of polished brass, crisp dress uniforms, and flashing press cameras. The atmosphere was electric, heavy with the solemn tradition of military honor. High-ranking generals, government officials, and national media crews lined the aisles, their lenses focused on the stage where history was about to be made. As I walked down the central aisle toward the front row, my eyes drifted to the seats my father had so spitefully abandoned. Sitting right there in the VIP section, looking utterly out of place among the decorated officers, was Aunt Clara. She wore a modest blue dress she'd bought specially for the occasion, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, fighting back tears of quiet pride. Seeing her there, the woman who had actually earned that seat, gave me a sudden, overwhelming wave of calm. I took my position on stage as the presiding general stepped up to the podium. The broadcast was being streamed live across national television news networks, bringing millions of viewers into that hall. The general looked out at the crowd, his voice echoing through the loudspeakers as he began reading the official citation for my Silver Star. He spoke of a pitch-black night during a high-stakes emergency rescue operation behind enemy lines. He detailed how my unit came under intense, sustained fire, and how, despite sustaining injuries, I led a countermaneuver that secured the perimeter and saved the lives of 14 stranded soldiers. As the words filled the auditorium, I kept my gaze fixed on Aunt Clara, knowing that every choice I'd made had brought me to this exact moment. The general carefully pinned the silver star to my uniform, shaking my hand with a look of profound respect. But as the applause echoed through the hall, he didn't return to the podium to close the event. Instead, he stepped back to the microphone, smiling warmly as the live television cameras zoomed in close. "Today, we honor Captain Vance," the general's voice boomed across the auditorium. "But true service does not happen in isolation. It relies on the unsung heroes behind the scenes, the families who sacrifice quietly so our soldiers can stand tall." He paused, gesturing toward the front row. "Through a special joint initiative between the Pentagon and our veteran partner foundations, we recognize extraordinary civilian support. Today, we are honored to invite Ms. Clara Vance to step onto this stage." Aunt Clara gasped, placing a hand over her heart in disbelief. I stepped forward, taking her hand to guide her up the wooden steps. Tears welled in her eyes as the general presented her with an official glass plaque and an envelope. "Ms. Vance," the general announced to the nationwide broadcast audience, "in recognition of your decades of selfless support for our service members and your local veteran care initiatives, this foundation is officially liquidating your home mortgage in full and granting you comprehensive, lifetime medical coverage." The room erupted into a standing ovation. Aunt Clara wept openly, clinging to my arm in complete shock. Flashes flickered endlessly as news anchors reported the emotional moment live to millions of homes across the country. In that instant, on national television, the selfless woman who had been cast aside by my parents received the honor and security she truly deserved. The official ceremony concluded, and I stepped off the main stage into the quiet corridor of the reception hall. My chest was still heavy with emotion, the weight of the silver star gleaming brightly against my chest. As the military personnel and media crews drifted toward the main ballroom, I finally pulled my phone out from my jacket pocket to check the time. The screen lit up, and my breath hitched in my throat. Displayed across the notification bar were 49 missed calls, 18 urgent voicemail notifications, and an unceasing barrage of text messages. Every single one was from my father, my mother, and my brother Brandon. As it turned out, my parents hadn't gone far. After walking away from the hall, they had driven straight to a nearby restaurant, tuning into the live broadcast on the wall-mounted television screens just to see if I would embarrass myself. Instead, they sat in stunned, horrified silence as they watched the entire nation witness Aunt Clara being called onto stage. They had watched in real time as the Pentagon and the Veteran Foundation presented her with the endowment, wiping out her mortgage and handing her lifelong financial security. A grant that, had my father sat in his reserved VIP seat, would have been directed toward my immediate nuclear family. In their blind arrogance, they had walked away from the very prestige and financial relief my father had been desperately seeking to bail Brandon out of his debts. Now, the desperation in their messages was palpable. Before I could even process the flood of messages, the heavy double doors at the end of the reception lobby burst open. My father marched in first, his face flushed with a dangerous mixture of anger and panic, followed closely by my mother and Brandon. They had somehow bypassed the outer security checkpoint, driven by sheer desperation. "Valerie," my father barked, his voice echoing off the marble walls as he stormed toward me. "What is the meaning of this? You gave our seats away. That grant belonged to this family." I stood my ground, my posture straight, unbothered by his sudden explosion. "You walked out on me, Dad. You said you'd never stand with me. Remember? That was a private family matter," my mother chimed in, her voice shrill as she gestured wildly. "You embarrassed us on national television. Clara had no right to go up on that stage and take what was meant for your father." Brandon stepped forward, looking disheveled and agitated. "Val, be reasonable. I need that backing. The investors are pulling out of my company, and Dad was going to use the family grant status to leverage a loan for me. You have to tell the general there was a mistake. The truth was finally out in the open. They hadn't come back out of remorse or pride. They had come back because Brandon's business was collapsing and they saw my service as their personal safety net. There was no mistake, I said, my voice ice cold. Aunt Clara earned that recognition by actually standing by me. You three only showed up for what you thought you could take. Security is on their way. I suggest you leave before this gets ugly. 2 armed military police officers stepped into the lobby, their heavy boots echoing on the polished floor. My father opened his mouth to shout another order, but the cold, uncompromising authority in the guard's eyes made him stop dead in his tracks. Sir, you need to step back and clear the venue immediately, the senior officer commanded, his hand resting calmly near his belt. My father looked at me, pleading with his eyes for me to intervene, to save him from the humiliation. But I simply looked at him, completely unbothered. You told me you'd never stand with me, I said softly, the noise of the bustling reception fading into the background. And now you never will. Goodbye, Richard. I turned my back on them for the final time. As security escorted my shouting family out to the parking lot, I walked back toward the main ballroom where Aunt Clara was waiting, surrounded by officers and friends raising a toast in her honor. For 28 years, I had searched for acceptance in a home that treated me like an afterthought. It took a silver star to make me realize that true family isn't about shared blood. It's about who stays by your side when the lights are off. If you've ever had to cut ties with people who only loved you when it was convenient, drop a comment below and share your story. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this one.